One of the things that I believe the state discovered was, and I think this is based upon scores on the state test and the difficulty passing the state testing. I think it has to do with some of the feedback they were getting from teacher preparation programs, that you cannot make the assumption that the student who comes to you has all the content and all they need help with is the pedagogy. You cannot make that assumption. Dr. Evans, the other Dr. Evans, no relationship, tells a story about he overheard some students in the hallway talking about why weren't there any Japanese internment camps in Florida after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So he stops and he engages with them and he says, well, why do you think that is? I just don't know. I can't figure out because it would be so easy to get here from Hawaii. And he kind of looked at him. He said, and one of the girls, when he tells it, he goes, and they said Hawaii is just right next to Florida. And he was troubled about that, and they began to argue with him. So then they took him to a classroom and showed him the map of the United States. You know how there's the little blot with the Alaska and Hawaii is right next to, and he said, really? Yeah. And then he said to them, well, what's this? And they said, now these are juniors in college. And they said, well, that's Alaska? And he said, well, tell me what you know about Alaska. And so they proceed to say, well, it's cold and there's Eskimo. Okay, tell me what you know about Hawaii. Well, they have beaches and palm trees and everything else. You know, he kept prompting and finally a light goes off and they go, oh, they can't really be right next to you. No, they're not right next to you. Okay, so that's just to say, I'm not trying to scare you, but I am trying to be realistic about the amount of content knowledge. I do social studies. Most of my students, I did a lesson about Albert Einstein, Jackie Robinson, Harriet Tubman, Abraham Lincoln, I can't remember who else, and none of the class knew all of them. And most of them knew Abraham Lincoln. I would say all of them knew Abraham Lincoln. There were some that didn't know any of the other three, had never heard of them before, according to them. Some of these kids have not had a social studies class since high school, and I apologize to coaches in the room, and when they were in high school, a coach showed them films every day. And that's all the American history they ever had. So, again, content. Well, let's look at, John Safier has come up with a 9-step content planning conference. You're going to have you can do other things, as you see on the sheet there. You can do other things at some conferences. At least one time you need to have this kind of conference, a content planning conference. The 9 steps can be moved around except for number 9. And let me show you number 9 real quick. Identify the activities which align with the lesson objective. That's where they want to go first. Why do student teachers want to talk about this? That's the fun stuff, the cute stuff. I found this really cool thing on Pinterest, and I want to do it. Okay, what does it have to do with the content? I don't know, but it's going to be fun. Okay, so we have to help sometimes. So let's go back. Whoops. So you're going to meet with your student, your candidate, practicum, student teacher, whatever. You have this meeting and you meet with them. And so the first step is together to identify the focus of the lesson. And that's going to be based on the standards, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But you're going to